What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube world? This is Bar911970, and as always, I thank you for watching my video, and I hope you guys are enjoying your day. Unless you live on the East Coast like I do, and you see how it's been torrentially downpouring all night, and I'll tell you this much, if I see at least two of every animal walking down the street, I know we're in trouble. Alright, guys, speaking of fear, which is the title of this video, you can see that the government and the media have non-stop fear tactics in their pockets, basically ready to throw at us at any moment. And that's the latest one right now is the sequester and the loss of all the services. If they don't get together by March 1st, we're going to lose, according to them, basically everything. But this is an old tactic that at this point, the smart people like you and I who are watching videos like this and getting real information instead of just listening to the programming on the mainstream media, which, by the way, is 90% of the media is owned by 6 corporations. So, we know that fear is used to control the masses. And the masses, unfortunately, are either middle class or poor. And they want to make sure they keep their slave labor under control. So if you use fear of punishment, fear of attack, fear of loss, it gets people to do what they want, their agendas. It's a lot easier that way. That's the wonderful benefits of things like the internet and the mass media. It could really spread out the information to billions of people throughout the world and spread fear a lot faster than the olden days when they didn't have things like television. So, let's go throughout history, just recent history, of the things that they use for fear. So let's go back. Let's start at 1999. Now, I was 29 years old at that point. Now, does anybody remember a thing called Y2K? How many of you were actually around to experience that? Now, most people who didn't, who heard about it, just basically consider it a joke. But before the year 2000, people were seriously scared about Y2K, because basically the whole premise behind it was, if you look at your computer screen now, you see the date, it says 2013. Well, back in those days, they didn't really think about it when they made the programmings back in the 60s and 70s. They used only double digits. So what they were saying was, oh, when it hits 2000, because we haven't had the program set, it's going to resort to 0, everything's going to shut down, and then lo and behold, bad things will happen. Planes will fall out of the sky. It was real fear tactics. It was talked about almost every day. And I remember in the New Year's Eve party I went to in 1999, people were basically, everybody was like hooking up with everybody that night because they were like, this is going to be the last day on Earth and we want to go out with a bang and everybody's going to be celebrating. It's going to be a great time. And everybody was also saying, oh, once it hits midnight, everything's going to shut down. We heard rumors of 15,000 body bags in Manhattan. And lo and behold, when midnight happens, guess what? Everybody laughed because we were still alive. So hopefully you appreciate all the special effects. Fear averted, crisis averted. All right, let's talk recently. We have things like, for example, if you remember in 2011, remember that priest that was telling everybody, or minister, I don't remember his name, I didn't really pay attention to it as much because I thought it was ridiculous. Remember in the early months of 2011 how he was saying that, oh, this is the end of the world? And when that date passed, he turned around and said, oh, well, we did recalculations and made a mistake. It's actually later on in, I think, like October or November of 2011, that it's guaranteed that it's going to be the end of the world, so you better repent. And people were selling their homes and, getting ready for the end of the world. Didn't happen. Remember when people were talking about Planet X, Narabu, the 11/11/11 date, where all of a sudden dwarf star was going to hit into the planet and kill us? Didn't happen. Fast forward to 2012. Everybody remember December 21st, the apocalypse? Which, by the way, the real definition of apocalypse is an unveiling. It's not what they make you think, but that's what the media does. Like, for example, with assault rifles, they make them seem very deadly when they really don't understand the true definition of an assault rifle, because they make it seem like these AR-15s that they had in these last supposed mass murders, what you want to believe is your thing about things like Sandy Hook, Aurora, etc. They make it seem like they're these killer weapons of, that they're fully automatic, which, by the way, fully automatic weapons have been illegal since the 1930s, but they make them seem very scary. Oh, assault rifles, they're out to get you. And that's why people like Piers Morgan would go out almost every week and do his propaganda program about controlling guns and talking about nothing but things he said he couldn't understand. Like, if you ever watch, you should seriously download Piers Morgan Gun Control. Every interview he's done, and he's done, I think, at least between 7 and 10 interviews, he says the same thing every time. I don't understand why an American citizen would need an AR-15. Well, if somebody was to tell you 2 plus 2 is 4, if you didn't understand what that was beforehand, once you're told, that's pretty much it. So what I don't understand is if somebody is that mentally challenged to the point where he could be told the same thing over and over again, and he says the same thing of, I don't understand, why does he have his own news program? Is he that stupid? But no, the thing is, they realize that the average person has a 3-second goldfish mentality and they forget everything. So each interview he does, he's not expecting people to remember the last one. So he tries to do the same tactics over and over again. People don't seem to understand that are not educated and don't actually watch anything additional to the mainstream media or television programming, is that the rights to our Second Amendments are not for hunting. They're not for target shooting and skeet shooting, like the president showed that wonderful picture of him skeet shooting, which, by the way, if you ever saw that picture, he's shooting straight down, almost like straight even. Last time I checked, when you skeet shoot, you go up in the air, but, you know, that's a whole nother topic. But the reason for the Second Amendment is for the citizens of the United States of America Corporation to protect themselves against things like, for example, a tyrannical government. And also, the reason that they need multiple gun clips, like 30 rounds or 100-round clips, is for protection against mass problems. I'll give you a prime example. Remember the O.J. Simpson trial, if you were old enough to remember that? Remember the riots that happened afterwards? Well, the only store owners that actually kept their stores from being burnt to the ground or basically destroyed and robbed were the people that were standing on the roofs of their buildings with weapons like an AR-15 with multiple clips. Because if you saw 200 people coming at you, what good is a handgun with 6 shots in it? What good is a shotgun with maybe a 5-round capacity? This is what people like Piers Morgan don't understand. But I think he does understand it. It's not going with his propaganda, so that's why he continues to say the same thing. But what is the point of all this? The point of this is to demonstrate how fear can control things. Because throughout our lifetime, at least throughout my lifetime, there's nothing but fear. There are wars. They talk about terrorists. They talk about asteroids. They talk about remember Russians, the evil communists, Cuban Missile Crisis, all these things. So now recently we have the fiscal cliff. We have quantitative easing. We have now the sequester with the taking away of supposedly everything, according to the government. And the way they talk, like, for example, if you watched any of these interviews, and you could find clips all over YouTube, there was one where basically Janet Napolitano was being interviewed about this, and she's talking about how we're going to have like 5,000 less people, protecting our borders, and things aren't going to be as safe. But she said, oh, well, I'm not trying to promote fear. It's like, well, you could potentially lose everything. It might be easier for terrorists, and there's going to be less security so more people can cross the borders, but I'm not trying to scare you. Really? What this does is fear equals control. If you're scared, you want to think that you need to be protected. Now, they're not trying to take away things from the top 1%. I mean, you're not going to hear things about, oh, well, there's going to be less Lear jets out there available. Or, those yachts you guys love to get, they're going to start getting smaller. So if we don't save this, just imagine your 75-foot yacht is going to be reduced to 63 feet. Oh, no. Or you're not going to have room for a second helicopter on your, penthouse apartment building, because the apartment buildings are going to get smaller. Instead of 20,000 square feet, it's going to be 19,000 square feet. Be careful. And, that caviar that you love, it's going up an extra $5 an ounce. They don't talk about that. What they do is they hit the poor, they hit the middle class, and they hit the people that are dependent on the system. Now, let me give you a little brief history about me. For about 10 years of owning this house, I basically lived alone. I chose to do it. It was a happy time, the most happiest time of my life. I used to have parties anytime I wanted. When I dated a girl, I didn't want anything serious. I purposely did not want a girlfriend. I wanted to date, and if things didn't work out, or if I wanted to see somebody else, that's what I did. Because that's just the type of person I was. I didn't want somebody to tell me what to do. I didn't want to have to go where I didn't want to go. But what it taught me, and now that I look back at it, I'm really proud of that situation and that time in my life, is it gave me independence. It meant that, well, if I needed food, I went out and bought it. If I needed a job, I went out and got it. If I needed something, I got it myself. It gave me independence. It made me not have to rely on other people to provide for me. If I needed something, I went and got it or did the best I could to get it. Now, I never stole. I never robbed from people. I never did anything like illegal. I did whatever it took as far as, like, for example, if I needed to work 3 jobs 7 days a week, if that's what I had to do to pay the bills, that's what got done. But what it taught me is I don't need to be dependent on the system. In other words, I didn't have to call my mother every time I needed something or get all my friends to do my work. I did it on my own. And if you see these days where over 45 million people are dependent on the welfare system in one shape or form, they're going to be easily controlled because now when you see these supposed cuts, which we know aren't going to happen because, in the 11th hour they always come together and save the day because, they want to look like heroes, these people are not going to have those programs taken away, but they don't know that because by what the government says and what the media says, they're going to lose all their programs, so they get scared and they'll do whatever it takes to not lose them. And the sad part is the average person on welfare could easily work. But this is how they control the people, by making it too easily, too good to pass up. Because what's your choice? Let's see, you could work sometimes part-time if you can even get a job, or work so many extra hours for the minimum pay and barely make it by, or you can get a welfare check for probably the same amount of money you would get for all that work you were doing, if not more, and you could sit at home, eat bonbons, and do whatever you want throughout the day. Well, it would pretty much be a no-brainer for most people, and that's why most people are on the system. Now, we do need a welfare system to take care of people, but legitimate people, like handicapped people, physically and mentally, like an elderly person who is just too old to work, or like a single parent who has children and they're trying to take care of their children. These are legitimate people. But the average people out there, and I've heard this so many times from people, it actually is cheaper and more beneficial for them to actually not work and get paid by the government. Because you're not spending gas, you're not going out to buy yourself lunch, you're actually just sitting at home waiting for a paycheck. But what that does is it makes people dependent on the system. So anytime there's a change or anytime there's a fear tactic, they're trying to scare you. So we need to wake up from this and see that they have an unlimited supply of fear in their pocket. If they need to, they could throw a terrorist attack or a potential terrorist attack in your face. They could talk about, oh, an asteroid might be coming to get you, or, uh-oh, another rogue nation is out there trying to hunt you down and shoot you, or we could lose another billions of dollars in our program. I mean, really, they talk about, like, if they have these cuts, even if they did have them, all of a sudden our security is going to be less? I don't know. I think it might be a good thing if you think about it, if there's less TSA agents to grope and molest people at the airports. And last time I checked, we have, 10 times more in our security than any other nation as far as money is concerned. And they really think maybe, $85 in loss, $1 billion in losses in that area is going to destroy our nation? Of course not. It's going to be just like another Y2K, but the people, the sheeple people, not the smart people like you and I who actually learn about this stuff, those are the people sitting there worried. Oh my God, I'm going to lose my programs. Oh my God, I hope they save the day. We're really going to be rooting for you guys to work together, the left and the right. When they don't realize they're the ones that cause these problems. It's cause a problem, create a reaction, come up with a solution. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book, and you see it still happens time and time again. So I just, for me, I don't understand it because I'm a very independent person. Yes, I'm married now. Yes, I have a wife. And I could easily have somebody to add to the support. But the thing is, I don't need somebody to take care of me. My wife is here, and we spend time together. And it's not like all of a sudden, wow, I have now somebody who could provide for me. No, that's not how it works. I won't ever, for example, go on welfare. And some of you know that I've had financial problems in times. Um, Even back on my old channel, there were times I was having financial problems. But I'll never sit there and say, all right, I'm going to go down to the welfare office and I'm going to have them take care of me for the rest of my life and I won't work. No, I get jobs. I want to do it the right way. It's just more pride. It's like, for example, back in the early 90s to the up to the early 2000s, I used to work out all the time. I mean, I rented space at my massage place. The first place I rented from was in a gym. So I used to work out all the time. And I was a member of Gold's Gym, and I used to work out with, the best part was I used to work out with these 3 professional bodybuilders. One of them was my massage client. And it was the best thing in the world because here I am, I'm like 175 to 195 pounds at the time, and these guys were like 350 pounds of solid muscle, and I felt like I was the king of the world because here I was. It was almost like one of those things on Sesame Street, which picture doesn't belong. These guys are huge, and I'm this little guy, but they took me under their wing, and I just felt like, oh, no one ever fuck with me because, these guys would get my back. But they would always brag about, how they were on steroids and how they were taking the latest injection of whatever chemical. And to me, I always felt like that's cheating. I never wanted that stuff because for me, that was the easy way. When I used to work out, the only thing I ever took was a vitamin, and then I would have a cup of peanuts and raisins, and I would use that for some energy and some protein. But I felt like, if I got really strong and it was based on an injection of a steroid or some kind of chemical, then technically I didn't do it. So that's the same thing I think about with the government. When I think about these welfare programs, yes, they are beneficial for people, but not for everybody. But the main reason for them is for you to lose your independence, you to lose your individuality, to become part of a system dependent on that system. And the people that control it use fear at any given moment to be able to keep you in line. And that's why we need to stop with the system. That's why, for example, when you talk about investing in stocks and the SLV, GLD, bonds, and things like that, it is geared to make sure that you will make a little bit of money. You may make a couple of $1,000s, but you will never become a top 1% person. But you have to understand what you're doing is you're contributing to that system. Now, I'm not saying that we all don't contribute to the system in one way, shape, or form. I understand people need to work. They need the money to pay bills because at this time, the fiat dollars are the only thing we can use pretty much to be able to pay a mortgage. So I understand that we can't fully escape it. But we do have the choice of the amount that we do. If we're doing the bare minimum because we need to do it, we survive, that's one thing. But if you're doing the stuff that you know that you can easily not do because you want to make a little profit from it, then you're helping the system to continue what it's doing to us. And we are all affected. That's why you see higher prices. You're paying higher prices at the pump. When you're buying food, you're paying higher prices. They are doing all these things. They are raising your taxes every year. They are taking away benefits from your children. We are allowing them to put chemicals in things like your soda and candies and things that your children are consuming. So if you don't think that what you do doesn't affect you or your system, you're sadly mistaken. So what they do is they dangle a little carrot in front of people and say, well, if you invest in the stock market and you listen to the Dow Jones reports and you invest in the paper scam, you're going to make some money. Of course you do. But you're allowing them to make 1 billion times more than you will ever do on your best day. And they are the ones that are controlling the system. And that's why things like gold and silver are so low when they should be a lot higher, considering how many people are buying physical silver, especially on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you're seeing record sales even just this year, and every time it gets more and more sales. This is what we need to understand. They use greed in people to be able to contribute to a corrupt system. So that's why, for example, I will never invest in stocks. I will never buy a U.S. bond. Even when people say to me, because, there are times, like I said, I financially will struggle, people have actually emailed me and said, Chris, we wouldn't mind if you put advertisements on your YouTube channel. Well, I would mind, because if I put ads on there I'm helping to contribute to that system. Now, that doesn't mean that people who are doing it are bad people, because sometimes you'll do whatever it takes to make money. Well, just because you could justify things any way you want, it doesn't make it right. And I'm not trying to sit here saying I'm this perfect person who does everything right. Of course not. But if I don't have to add to something that contributes to it, I feel like it's a win for me. I want to reduce the amounts, not add to them. So if somebody chooses to do an ad on their their YouTube channel, it doesn't make them evil. But what it does is it helps that system, that corrupt system, to be able to get more money, to be able to ultimately control all of us, to be able to use that fear, to be able to supply these terrorists with weapons decades earlier, and then have those same people supposedly attack us. This is a thing that we've seen over and over again. It's the fear. It's the control. How long do we want to be feared? In fear. How long do we want to be controlled? When do you want to take control of your own life? I, because of my experiences in my past, are a very independent person. I could spend the rest of my life never having to have anybody do anything for me. There's nothing wrong with help every now and then, but I don't rely on somebody else to take care of me. I don't need somebody to drive me to work. I don't need somebody to get me a job. I don't need somebody to go food shopping for me. I can do that stuff myself. But like, for example, if my wife wants to cook me dinner, I think that's an amazing thing. That's a beautiful thing for her to want to do that for me. And yes, that makes my life a little bit easier. But I wouldn't ever sit there and command her and expect it. And that's why every single time when she wants to help me with something, I show her appreciation with a thank you. I don't take it for granted. Don't take things for granted. And it's very easy to do that because with all these fear tactics they use, and they can pull any one of them out of their pocket, and you'll see what's coming on March 1st. They are going to save the day at the 11th hour. You'll see it. That in ultimate situations, you have control of your life. I beg and plead for people to stop as much as they can adding to the system. Like I said, we can't avoid it because to survive in this world, you have to be part of the system. But limit the amount. Realize that when you invest in paper assets, when you invest in bonds, when you invest in all these government-issued programs, you are contributing to those corrupt people by giving them finances. So yes, I'm not saying you're not going to make money. You will make money if you know what you're doing. But, you can make money selling drugs too. Does that make it right? You could make money murdering other people. Does that make it right? Just because, for example, and I'm not trying to demonize people who invest in the stock market, so please don't get me wrong on this. Once you know there's something corrupt, you have to slow it down. And that's why nowadays I opened up a federal credit union, and the majority of my money is not in a bank anymore. I used to put all of my money into banks, but when I realized the corruption, like places like HSBC and what people like JP Morgan Chase are doing, I don't want to provide them my money to help them with supporting terrorists, supporting drugs being pumped into the country. I don't want to be a contributor. So when you invest in paper, like SLV and GLD, which controls the price of the physical market, people are always complaining that the gold and silver hasn't risen yet. Well, that's one of the reasons why, because as long as we keep feeding the beast, it's going to continue. And I've made the analogy so many times in the past, but I haven't done it recently, so I'll make this one analogy. Some of you who have been watching my channel for a while will understand this. Think of the situation like being in a village, and all of a sudden a giant appears. And he's going around smashing building after building. And one person goes along and says to the giant, if you don't smash my house, I will help you to get the food that you need and help to smash other houses. And the giant will sit there and say, all right, that seems like a good idea. This guy is going to actually do the work for me. He's going to provide me with food, show me the best places to go. So I'm going to do that. And the other person, the little person that wanted to protect his house, is saying, well, I'm making a good deal. I'm doing some of the work for the giant, providing him with other houses to smash, and he's going to leave mine alone. He thinks he's doing a good thing, and he thinks he's saving his family. But what ultimately happens is, once the giant gets to the point where there's no more food left, and there's no more houses to smash, he's going to go to that house and he's going to smash it. He's going to kill that person. So ultimately, in the end, even though you think you might be helping along the system and working in the system, eventually you get burned as well. And we all do. That's why this fear tactics that they use goes to control all of us. And that's why we're paying up to $4 plus in gas, and how our food supply is getting shorter and shorter, and how they're adding more and more chemicals, and how our people, our children, are subject to all these medications because, God forbid, they might be a little bit individual and actually have free thinking abilities. Schools don't want that. They want them to be good, obedient little dogs. Do what they're told, to be programmed. Just get them while they're young, because like they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It affects us. You may not see it all the time. You may be a fairly wealthy person, but that doesn't mean it doesn't affect your children or your children's children or down the line, because as you see with things like quantitative easing, they kick the can down the road. So sometimes it may not affect you, but it may affect your children. It may affect your grandchildren. And do you really want to grow up and get older and see your children, your grandchildren's, and your children's children's families suffer because we decided to do nothing about it, or just not care, or just love the fact that we have so much money that we're making? That's the one thing I'm glad I'm almost struggling. And anytime I make a little bit extra fiat that still has buying power as of today, I buy precious metals. I'm glad I did. And I'm sure a lot of you out there feel the same way. So, this is a very long video. I don't even know how long it is because I'm not doing it on YouTube, and there's no time. So I'm going to end it now, and I want to thank everybody out there that watched this entire video. Please leave your comments, and please, guys, don't live in fear anymore. Don't let them control you. They've been doing it for centuries. We have the power to stop it. The corruption cannot continue. Don't be a part of it. Do the best that you can to take away their power to steal our money, because that's ultimately what happens. That's why it's not a few individuals suffering, it's the entire country, the entire world. Where does it stop? Alright guys, thanks for watching, enjoy your day, and peace!